Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Develop podcast. This is your host, Danielle Reynolds, and I am so excited to be back with you all. We've got an amazing episode with my good friend, Evan Green from our Midland, Odessa offices. Evan, welcome to the Develop podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Danielle. I'm super excited to do this.
Well, we are excited to have you here to learn about you, your story. So let's just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about you. Where were you born? What school did you go to? And ultimately, why accounting?
I don't know if we have enough time to get into all of this. So I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and growing up, my parents were kind of nomadic. They're all over the place. Wasn't in the military or anything like that, but they kind of just would get it in their minds that they wanted a new location and a fresh start. And so we moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Medina, Ohio, to Hamilton, Montana, from Montana to North Carolina, back to Montana, and then to North Texas, Denver, Colorado. They ended up in DC for a year, and then back in Denver. So around the, I don't know, the fifth or sixth move, I kind of got sick of following them around and kind of wanted to pave my own way and make my own path. And we were living in Dallas at that time. So I decided I had finished an associate's degree from Cullen College in the Dallas area. And I had decided, between a few schools, and OU was one of them. And sorry, Danielle, but I decided
sooner. Didn't know that.
I decided on Texas Tech. After visiting their campuses, and it kind of reminded me of home in Montana, is where I spent most of my childhood growing up and stuff like that. So the culture and everything at Texas Tech was a good fit for me. I really liked it out in Lubbock. At that point, I was in engineering, toughing it out, trying to become a mechanical engineer, and really just didn't like any of my coursework or anything like that. I just figured it was school. School is school, and it's not supposed to be fun. But after being hard-headed and sticking through engineering for 5 years or so, I decided to make a change. And a friend of mine turned me on to accounting. He said, it might be kind of up my alley. It's not as antisocial and boring as people might think. So I took a stab and applied for the business school at Texas Tech in the accounting program. And it ended up being one of the best choices I could have made. Ended up in the business school, started enjoying all my classes. I wanted to go to school. I was sitting front row and being a super nerd and all that kind of stuff. But it was like an eye-opening experience, that classes and school could actually be enjoyable, and really made me look forward to starting a career in accounting. And at that point, man, I guess I didn't really know what the routes were as far as audit, tax, or industry or anything like that. But as far as my background in school and growing up and that kind of stuff, that's the crash course.
I love that. You might have lived in the most states at Whitley Penn. What a great fun fact about you.
Yeah. Well, and then within Whitley Penn, I worked in London and lived in London too. So you can add a country.
You're all over the place, which we will definitely talk about that and that experience. But Perfect. So kind of an interesting background, right? The way you found yourself in accounting. Tell us a little bit. So Collin College, then to Texas Tech. What was then the recruiting process for you like? Is it what we normally go through as you were meeting different firms? How did you land an internship? Talk to us about that.
Sure. I was kind of a non-traditional student at that point. Like I had changed majors, and after 5 years in engineering, I had maybe 5 semesters after I switched into the business school to graduate with my bachelor's degree, and approximately 200 credit hours. So I had kind of aged myself out of the meet the firms process there at Texas Tech. But tech recruiting and tech, business school does a great job of making sure that people get placed. So going through just the normal accounting courses, there's a seminar professional practice course that you have to take. And Kristen Bigby over there is the professor, and she, kind of just prepared me and said, look, this is probably going to be one of your better opportunities to get in touch with these public accounting firms. Since you're not going to be able to go through the meet the firms process in the spring, this is a good opportunity to get in front of them and talk with them. And so Nathan McGowan came out and gave that presentation for Seminar Professional Practice. I loved it. Thought it was a great presentation, great firm. Whitley Penn really stuck out to me out of, the 6 or whatever presentations that you have to watch. And so I approached Nathan afterwards and kind of just gave him a rundown of my background, that I'm graduating in December, that I'm more non-traditional. I'm not going to go through the meet the firms process and that kind of stuff. And he gave me some really good advice. He was super welcoming, really easy to talk to, and kind of just reaffirmed, that Whitley Penn would be a good fit. And so Whitley Penn is really where I wanted to end up. For myself, I needed a summer internship the semester before I graduated. And Whitley Penn wasn't offering those. So I landed at a small firm in the Plano area for my summer internship. And it was towards the end of that internship, the firm was, really small size. I think there's 4 or 5 people in the audit group. But we had a blast. Super friendly, culture was great. I was really looking for somewhere where I could, pave my own way as far as career goes. And I could just, before even starting full time there, I knew it would kind of hinder my career progression. I'd be waiting on people in front of me. I'd have to wait for the seniors to move up and so on and so forth to get promoted. And I didn't want to end up somewhere where you just kind of had to wait for tenure or the people in front of you to move up or move out before you had an opportunity to advance. So I, at the end of that internship, I got on the Whitley Penn website and basically just applied for every single open audit position.
You're like, I'm bound to get one, right?
Yeah. And so I applied for Dallas, I applied for Houston and a few other areas. And, I got the call the next day and it said, hey, would you be willing to interview in Houston? And I had never been to Houston before. And I said, sure, why not? And so my first trip down to Houston for the interview was in, I think, August. And I had accepted my offer the next week. And my second trip to Houston was after I graduated, and I packed all my stuff in my car and drove down there to try to find an apartment a week before I started. So it was kind of a whirlwind, but just from the experience I had with Nathan in the professional practice presentations and stuff like that, just really, I could feel this is a good place for me and a good fit. And Nathan kind of reaffirmed that when I spoke with him, and then everyone I met in the Houston office during my interviews. It was just my type of people. I knew it'd be a good opportunity, career wise, since we were fairly new to the Houston market when I started. And, I guess the dominoes just kind of fell in place and it worked out really well.
Sounds like it. And, Kristen Bigby does a great job at Tech. She's still doing that class and presentation. So I know they do a great job of getting their students plugged in, and fun to see it come full circle, right? And I think you never know when a connection is going to come back into play, right? So you meeting Nathan, and I'm sure he was up in our Dallas office during that time.
Yeah, he was still in Dallas.
Full circle of you started in Houston and then he wound up there in Houston.
Yeah.
So fun to see that all come to play.
Yeah, it's even crazier. The last 2 years, Nathan and I have actually given that presentation for some the professional practice seminar.
Right.
So I went from sitting in the crowd and listening and wanting to work for Whitley Penn to standing in front of a group of 80 students and trying to pitch Whitley Penn. So full circle for sure.
Powerful for them to hear your story. You're literally in their shoes. So
literally.
They can relate to that. So I love that. And you're going to keep giving that presentation. So
I hope so.
So let's talk about some of the skills you learned really on in your career. You started at a smaller firm, and even when you joined Whitley Penn, right? We were a smaller firm then. So what were some of the skills you learned early on that still play a role now?
Yeah, as far as skills go, I mean, the biggest skill I think you can learn early on, the biggest skill I think that helped me early on, has nothing to do with the technical accounting or audit or anything like that. It's more of the interpersonal and communication skills. I think that our Houston partners did a really good job of kind of instilling in me early on, and it's always really hard to kind of find a line, but knowing when to kind of work through something on your own versus when to raise your hand when you're stuck. And kind of it's very difficult, especially now, as a senior manager, to say, I need help.
Yeah.
I have a lot on my plate, I'm kind of underwater, and I need help because, especially at this level, it's you're kind of looked at as the person who's supposed to help solve everything, and you might take on a little bit more than you can handle. And so learning early on to be able to raise your hand before things get too out of control is probably one of the better skills, and it's very, very, very difficult. And again, I still struggle with it sometimes, but kind of along those lines it's helpful and very beneficial to learn when to say no, when you're kind of overloaded. And it's when you're starting out, and me moving to a new city here last year, you always want to be that person who says yes to everything. Like, yes, let me help out. Yes, I want to do this. Yes, I can dig in and help you finish that up. And it's you can get into a trap where you take on way too much work, and having the ability to identify how much you have on your plate, and say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't help out, on this project, but I'll help out the next time, or whatever it might be. Those are two really big ones, is kind of just being able to raise your hand when you need assistance, or hey, look, I'm looking out a couple weeks from now and I might be underwater, but identifying that as soon as possible, and then knowing when to say, hey, I can't take on another project at this point, but reach out next time, and that kind of stuff. Those are two big ones that are just, it's a lifesaver, because if you get yourself into a perpetual cycle where you're kind of underwater and overworked, no one can survive that way. So it's kind of self survival tips more than anything.
I love those. Well, those are the ones we need to hear, and from our leaders, being vulnerable. And there's a lot of, you had a lot of great advice there, but just like asking for help, it's not a bad thing. And I love there's this yes, if, no, but, like, yes, I can help out if, and no, not right now, but, maybe later on. So it's about how you communicate that too. And it's not a weakness for you to say no. And I think time is so valuable as well. And just making sure the things you're committed to, you are going to do a great job at and give it your all is really important.
No, you're exactly right. And it is kind of a vulnerability thing where you want to be able to finish everything and do a great job. But if you say yes to project number 12 and you don't get it done on time, or you do a poor job, whoever was looking for help in the first place would rather have you said no because you were already underwater. And so it doesn't help out anybody, including yourself, to kind of step up and try to take on one too many things.
Yeah, so true, and such great advice. So kind of on that same page, have you ever experienced any setbacks or struggles, and maybe they were, early on as you began your career, and how did you work to overcome those?
Yeah, I feel like everyone probably goes through setbacks and struggles, if not on a daily basis, on like weekly, monthly, or a busy season basis. The best thing for me was forming a relationship with the partners early on in the Houston area where I started, and kind of just opening up and trying to take on as much as I could, and take on as much knowledge as I could from them. So, the people who have been in public accounting for 15, 20, 30 years, there's a reason that they're here and still around. And it's because they've kind of gotten things figured out. So leveraging your managers or senior managers or partners is probably the only reason that I've made it this far. I had a really good group in Houston. So yeah, it's constantly running into battles as far as whether it's just formatting or documenting an Excel file that your client gave you that might be a little messy, or you can't figure it out, or maybe you're working on the cash flow and you're just stuck. You worked on it for a couple hours or whatever. You run into stuff like that, like I said, on a weekly basis at least. So having having a good support group and being able to go to a Nathan McGowan or a Brian Starr or Amanda Beabout or a Jeff Edwards, early on in my career and saying, like, look, I've got this, either it's a technical accounting issue or it's a, cash flow financial statement prep issue or whatever it might be, and having them be, being able to instill some of their knowledge on you, and then just kind of absorbing that was, I mean, it's irreplaceable, that the knowledge and stuff that the partners and managers can kind of pass along. But if you don't ask and you don't form that kind of open relationship where you can talk through questions, talk through issues and stuff like that, then you're not going to learn. I mean, they have a whole, it's a whole untapped whole wealth of knowledge between that partner group, and so making sure that you're taking advantage of that is pretty significant. Early on in my career, definitely lacked documentation skills, and documentation is probably one of the hard things of audit. And I know I had a few talkings to from Brian Starr, where it's like, hey man, like sometimes all you needed was like, hey, step it up. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I understand what you mean. I understand what you're looking for. And then, if not, just like, hey, how do you suggest I approach this? How do you suggest I look at this? And between gaining efficiencies and gaining the technical skills and all that kind of stuff, so much of it just comes from, the people ahead of you. And luckily here, everyone is super willing to help and help pass along that knowledge, and super interested in your career growth. And so they were always willing to, and I'm sure partners and managers at that time had plenty on their plate, but they were all willing to, take a minute, sit down with me and make sure that I was progressing, because it's beneficial for everyone in the firm. So yeah, utilizing that knowledge base that the people in front of you have it's one way to get out of those sticky situations where you're stuck or challenges and all that kind of stuff.
I love that. It's utilizing your resources. And then another thing I think you touched on is it's about perspective. Like, what are you learning? Okay, you're going to go through setbacks and struggles. Like you said, everyone does. You go through them weekly, but what are you choosing to learn from every single setback you go through, so that when you are approached with it the next time, you take those things that you've learned and you just continue to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a lot of what we talk about, especially when we're doing reviews after each job or reviews after each busy season for our staff and seniors. Like, hey, here's an area of improvement, or here's one thing you can work on. Next time the review process turns around, that's something that you would hope that someone would take to heart and get better. So when we give or get constructive criticism or feedback, one of the biggest things we look at is, are they working on that? Like, we brought up this, maybe I was lacking in my documentation skills. Well, next year when we go through the annual review, did he work on it, or was he still struggling in documentation? If you don't learn and you don't take the criticism and the the helpful tips and tricks here and there, if you don't take that to heart and get better, I think that's kind of where you run into issues. So
100%. It's all about how you fail. You're going to fail forward. You're going to learn a lot. But so what is some of your best advice, let's say to students? I know you're really involved with our campus development efforts. So give us some best advice to students who are going through the recruiting process now or starting out in their career.
Oh my God, I have a lot. So it's all stuff that I wish I would have known. Yeah, right. It's all stuff I wish I would have known when I was in school. And so it's so much easier looking back now. But it's good advice that I wish I would have gotten when I was still in school. And so I guess let's start with one, is that I really wish, going into public accounting, so much of it is relationship based, especially once you get into manager, senior manager, and partner. I really wish I would have connected with my fellow students and my classmates, whether it's on just getting on LinkedIn and checking in, once a year on their birthday or whatever it might be. Since I was more non-traditional, I would show up to class, get my stuff done and take off, rather than kind of, forming those relationships I wish I would have formed. So I always encourage any of the students who are going through recruiting to reach out, connect, whether it's just LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, and check in once a year, because those students who you're graduating with or graduated a year before you or a year after you, they're all going into the same job market. They're all going into accounting. A lot of them are going into the same areas as far as Dallas Fort Worth or Houston, or whether they're staying out in West Texas, but they all become connections, whether they're at a different audit firm now or they go straight into the industry, whatever it might be. Accounting it's a lot smaller world than people would imagine. So having that connection from college, you could reach out to 3 or 4 years later, they might be a controller at a company that needs an audit, or they might be at a different public accounting firm and say, like, I'm looking for a change. You seem to enjoy Whitley Penn. Can I come over and just see what it's all about and all that kind of stuff. So having a pretty big network and a good big group right out of college, you're starting so far ahead of some of the others who might have not, like myself.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. I guess another one for the students starting out is, I guess I have one for when you start and one for when you're still picking a career path or a place that you want to work. When you're going through either the meet the firms process or the hiring process in industry or whatever it might be, so much of this position just relies on who you're working with. So I'm spending 8 or 9 hours with the same team every day for a week, and then jumping with a different team. But a lot of times we're in small conference rooms together. We're working through some difficult audit work or technical accounting and all that kind of stuff. Having a good group of people around you and a great culture and people who fit with your personality and all that kind of stuff is so important, because audit is audit and tax is tax, and AP accounting is AP accounting wherever you go. But the real difference is kind of who you're doing it with. And the group that we had in Houston when I started and now we'll have out here in West Texas makes such a difference as far as the day-to-day stuff. We're always joking around, and it lightens the mood a lot, and it takes some stress off of people, and also kind of forms the relationships where they know they can come and talk to you, whether it's personal stuff or work related stuff. It just kind of opens that communication like pathway, so they know, like, 1 minute you're just joking or talking about tech sports or whatever it might be, and the next moment they want to come in your office and talk to about their CPA exam study plan or some technical accounting stuff they ran into and stuff like that. So it really, that culture and that fit is very important. It changes your career progression. It changes how enjoyable your career is going to be. And so that's probably the biggest thing to look for when you're, I guess, picking a place to land. And then once you've started, the biggest thing for me when I started, and I think what's been so beneficial to me, was just worrying about the things that you can really control on your side. And you can't control what jobs you get scheduled on. You can't control, who is the senior, the manager, or what the client is like, or what they can provide or anything like that. But showing up with a great attitude and putting forth effort, those are two things that you can control every single day. And it really just, those two things can alone, even without the technical accounting knowledge and stuff like that, then that'll come. The technical accounting, the auditing skills and all that kind of stuff we can teach, but we can't really teach attitude and effort. And so those are two huge keys to, I think, having a really successful career, because with those two skills alone, you can progress very quickly and have a really good career.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that so much. Control what you can control. I mean,
right.
It's so good. Okay, so let's talk about your career, right? There's a lot of exciting things happening with Evan Green, audit senior manager. So walk us through how it has evolved, right? How you have progressed. You talked a little bit about, you were up in Dallas, took the opportunity in Houston, but even since Houston, a lot has changed and progressed. Being out West Texas now. So a lot of growth and opportunity along the way. Let's walk through that and what that kind of how it's looked for you and what it means to you.
Sure. I mean, to be totally honest, it's kind of a blur. I
You
started,
blacked out during it all?
yeah, I blinked, and it's been 6.5 years now.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, your first couple years in public accounting, I think it's going to be the same for everyone. It's really just drinking out of a fire hose.
Yeah.
You're trying to learn the audit methodology. You're trying to learn, the clients that you're scheduled on. I mean, you have different industries that you need to learn all this terminology and all that kind of stuff. So, my first 6 months was just that, drinking out of a fire hose, trying to get accustomed to the software and
But showing up with a good attitude and effort, right?
there you go, attitude and effort. So yeah, I mean, learning the people I'm going to be working with, learning the industries, learning the software that we use. There's no quick way around it. You're not just going to show up with those skills. So you just have to kind of just take in as much as you can over the first 12 months or so. I was lucky enough to get, like I said, get paired with this great group in Houston. After my first 6 months, we had the opportunity to kind of move into an in-charge role and help out on a lot of 401k audits when we were down a senior. And so to my benefit, I was working directly with partners who took a lot of work off my plate. So, they were very helpful, and they kind of knew that I was green, and they came in and would help out, finishing up a file or, wrapping up some of the stuff that was a little bit over my head. But they really let me take on as much as I was willing to take on. And so I kind of just showed up and helped out as much as I possibly could. Halfway through that first year, Nathan McGowan moved down to Houston and took over as a partner in charge of the office. And, at that point, you could tell there was a pretty drastic change in attitude. Not that it was poor before, but having Nathan come down and instill a lot of the, legacy Whitley Penn knowledge was very helpful. That was great. We had a really young partner group. And so that team helped me kind of just take on, or let me just take on as much as I could and would. And when I ran into problems and ran into issues, they would help me out. So, I ended up getting promoted to senior 18 months after I started with Whitley Penn. And then 2 years after that, again, it's all first year seniors is very difficult because you move from a doer to a manager type role, instead of just doing the day-to-day stuff and okay, go do this work paper, we have the support for it, and go do this work paper, we have the support for it, and that kind of stuff. You turn into someone who's got to manage people below you, and so you're delegating work, and then you're making sure that your current job is getting completed on time, and you're managing that, and you're getting status updates to the managers above you, but then you're also looking forward to the job that's the next week and the week after that, and then wrapping up the job that happened behind you. So one of my biggest weaknesses, I think, when I first started was probably related to my organizational skills. And that first year as a senior, you don't have a choice. You either have to be organized or you're gonna struggle. So I kind of it was kind of a sink or swim at that point. Like, figure out what works for you as far as organizational skills go, whether it's tracking things in emails or it's tracking things in a Word document or in Excel. So I again leveraged the partners above me, figured out what worked for them, and kind of tailored it to myself. And then after 2 years of senior, I got promoted to manager. So that's 3.5 years kind of into my career with Whitley Penn. And right around that same time, was picked to do this secondment in London with Smith and Williamson. So really exciting summer, got promoted to manager, and spent 4 months in London working on kind of international clients with IFRS and UK GAAP. Knocked off 8 countries out of my list that I wanted to go see, and met a lot of good relationships and a lot of friends over there in London and the UK that I still kind of keep up with.
Work all in one.
What's that?
Vacation and work all in one.
Yeah, I mean, it
what
really was
opportunity.
No, yeah, it really was. Like I I was lucky enough to get put on some out of town clients when I was over there. So I had
Yeah,
a week in Hamburg, Germany that I was working on a client. So that was, all covered. I had a week in Milan, Italy, at a client. So that was all covered. And then, outside of that, I took a weekend trip whenever I could. They have a lot of bank holidays, so a lot of 3-day
for sure.
weekends.
So was
Um,
doing this secondment always something you thought you wanted to do? Like, let's say starting at Whitley Penn, hearing about it, or was it like, how did that opportunity come about?
Yes. So to be totally honest, it was one of the things that stood out from the seminar and professional practice presentation because
Yeah,
Nathan was able to do a secondment at the same firm that I was. And when he mentioned that he spent 4 months in London working for this firm, it was something I wanted to do in college, like a study abroad program, and never thought it would either fit or I could afford it.
mhm,
And then with the changing the majors and that kind of stuff, it kind of put a damper on trying to do any program like that. So when he mentioned that that's something that they offer, I thought it was a really cool deal. And so it had been on my yearly goals for a few years before I actually got the opportunity to do it.
yeah,
So yeah, it was something that I had my eyes set on before I had even started with Whitley Penn. And one of the reasons why I thought it was going to be a good fit and something that I was really excited to try to do.
yeah. Love it. Well, it's a great opportunity.
It's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it really was probably the best time of my life. I mean, there's no comparison, and I can't imagine any time here in the next 30 years that I'm going to be able to, spend 4 months abroad or anything like that.
Right.
So the opportunity is great, um, and it was just something really couldn't pass up. And to
Yeah.
have something like that, a yearly opportunity, you get more than one, you get more than one try at it. So,
Yeah.
uh, and from for the most part, if anyone who's wanted to do it within the firm has been able to. And
Mhm.
so, just if it's something that anyone like, if you like travel, it's a no brainer.
Yeah. Well, as you're saying that, lots of similarities between you and Nathan, going through the story. So now let's talk, you mentioned Nathan moves down to Houston, the energy picks up there. Okay, so you now transition to West Texas. Let's
Right.
go through that transition. How has it been different? Transitioning offices, even client side. Walk us through that.
Sure. Yeah. The whole thing kind of came about with I was sitting down with Nathan last fall, and I've ever since meeting him and hearing his story and then him moving down into Houston, I've really kind of modeled my career after him. I didn't do an internship with Whitley Penn, so I'm not going to go intern all the way through partner like he did.
We'll give you
Um,
a pass because you've helped us out a lot of interns.
yeah, I appreciate that. So I've kind of modeled my career off of him, and he's been super helpful in the Houston area and really instrumental to my growth within Whitley Penn. And so we sat down last fall, and I was really trying to see, what my path to partner looks like in the Houston office, what I can do as far as helping out the firm, what opportunities do we have internally and externally that I can, throw my name in the hat for. And um, it was kind of perfect timing because he said, we kind of just finished a partner meeting. Where you can really go and help and make an impact right now would be to move out to Midland and Odessa. We just merged with Johnson Miller out here in November the year before. And, as you can expect, the transition was, it was difficult on both sides. We're implementing our new IT structure, all of our new software, new audit methodology. And because of that kind of the distance between Midland, Odessa, and the rest of our offices, they're almost on a kind of an island away from everyone else. And there wasn't anyone in their office where they could just walk into and say, what is a typical approach for this area? What can we do for this type of client, and what is Whitley Penn standard for
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And so that was, kind of a shock that that he brought that up.
Were
Really,
you a little thrown off? Like,
I was a little surprised.
yeah,
So it had always been in my like forward thoughts. Maybe we'll open up a new office in 2 or 3 years in Oklahoma City or Nashville or whatever it might be. But I
Yeah.
kept thinking that, partner would need to be first, and then I can, look into helping out or helping grow a new office, or
Yeah.
step into a leadership role in a new office. And so when Nathan brought that up, it really just kind of accelerated one of my career goals by, I would guess, 3 years. And the only difference was, it's West Texas rather than thinking that we would move into Oklahoma City or
Mhm.
something like that. And so, being a tech grad, liking the culture of West Texas, I already knew I fit in,
Yeah.
and having a large background in energy.
Mhm.
It took some convincing of the fiance, and really trying to plan out what the next 5 to 10 years of our lives we wanted it to look like. And
Yeah.
in the end, we really thought that this was going to be a good fit for myself, my career, but that, and also the family side, and what we were looking for as a family and personal, you know, goals over the next few years as well. So it's worked out very well on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's just been a whole new learning experience. It's I've always been up for a challenge and new opportunities, and that has definitely been both a lot of opportunity out here, and
Yeah.
also a lot of challenges. So the clientele really hasn't been that different. We had quite a bit of oil and gas companies and energy in Houston, oil field services, and out here in Odessa and Midland, it's a lot of the same, a lot of oil field services, a lot of large E&P companies. And so luckily it's kind of right up my alley and my sweet spot as far as the actual audit work itself, which has made the transition about as smooth as possible. The partners in the Odessa office have been very welcoming. They've been totally on board with the transition. They want to kind of do things the Whitley Penn way, and having someone out here who's kind of legacy Whitley Penn has seen the same type of transition with Nathan moving to Houston and living through that. I think that the experience that I brought out here into Odessa has been it's been welcome, and it's been super beneficial on all sides. And so it's made the transition about as easy as possible, with the partners being totally on board with me out here and really looking to make changes and implement things that make sense. And so, I was already fighting an uphill battle with brand new clients and brand new staff and seniors and all that kind of stuff. So it made it, one fewer thing that I had to worry about, fighting. Like who's this guy from, Houston who just moved out here and is trying to ask us to do things differently, or there's been none of that. And it's made the transition, about as good as you could ask for.
Yeah. Well, that's so good to hear. And, you really never know when that door of opportunity is going to open and what it's going to look like. So it sounds like everything was just kind of really great timing. Timing certainly is everything, right? And I know it's worked out really well for both you and the firm and everyone. So it's exciting to have you out there. So tell us, so what do you love most about client service, side of things and the work that you get to do? What's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing of audit is definitely the social aspect of it. I do enjoy the work. I enjoy, the fact that I'm always learning. Every single client is different. So you're changing things up every week, every 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it might be. So that's great. Just some of the, nothing gets monotonous. I feel like I'm learning something new, constantly. But really, my favorite part is getting out in front of our clients and forming a little bit of a personal relationship. Taking their teams to lunch and trying to make sure that we're serving our clients the best we can, but really forming that personal relationship, open line of communication with our clients. So when anything comes up, whether it's during the audit or not, they know that they can pick up the phone and reach out to you. That you're not just kind of a number cruncher behind the scenes that they get to talk to via email once a year. really just getting out in front of them and saying, like, forming that personal relationship. Like, we're not just going to be here once a year and ask you for support, but we're here all year round. When anything comes up, give us a call. So we're always asking them, how are your kids doing? What'd you do last weekend? What are you up to? Where are you going on vacation? And checking in with our clients all the time. And so that, forming those relationships and being in front of all of our clientele and being able to basically just socialize as part of my job is that's my favorite part. That's really what I enjoy. But as far as internally, I like all the changes in you never know what to expect each week. You're gonna have something different, and then being able to help kind of groom and grow our staff and seniors. Being in a brand new office this year and seeing some of the growth from our seniors and staff from January 1st through June 9th, it's been pretty unbelievable. A lot of these young kids are fresh out of school or still finishing their degrees, and the personal and professional growth that you see from the level that I'm at now, it's you can tell that they're getting much stronger. Technically, their social skills are growing because they're interacting with clients, their professionalism and all that kind of stuff. And it's rewarding from a managing standpoint to see, like, your people succeeding, and that I like that.
Yeah, that's probably a great transition, right? More into this leadership role where you're seeing those positive effects in the younger staff that are coming up, having that excitement, but you getting to watch them grow is a really great thing. And now being in a new market too.
Yeah, lots of changes.
We're in their shoes, so you know what they're going through.
Right.
So something I think is always really important, and kind of at even no matter what stage of your career in, but for those getting started, a really great way to feel like an owner of your career is getting involved. Whether that's we have a lot of great folks that help with our campus development efforts, or even the outside organizations, nonprofits, different networking clubs or events. Why do you think getting involved is so important internally and externally with whatever firm or company you're at?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it just feels good. Like, I can't really explain it other than the fact that I do it and it makes me feel happy. But within the company, obviously there's benefits as far as business development roles go. Getting out and meeting people in your network and your your area, and getting the Whitley pen name out there and that kind of stuff. That it offers some benefit as far as potential future clients, potential growth, whatever it might be, partnerships and stuff in the future. From a personal aspect of it, it's probably similar to my client service stuff. I really like the socialization and getting to know new people. And what I found over the last 6 or 7 years is the relationships and everything you form now are so instrumental to your personal and professional career that you never know who you're going to run into on an airplane, or you never know who you're going to run into in the airport or walking around town or whatever it might be. And I've met people from Montana out here in in Midland, and if you're not involved in trying to get out there and get your name out there and be involved in some of these organizations, you're probably missing out on a lot of people you can connect with, that whether it's business related or personal related. I met some people my first week here who have a basketball group that play basketball every Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5:30 in the morning. Well, I love basketball, and without getting out and getting involved in one of the groups that I'm in, I probably would have never met these guys, and that's a personal thing that I'd be missing. So now I got a group of 15 guys I can play basketball with, twice a week, and just the accounting world and the world in general is just so small that you run into people who grew up 15 minutes from where you did, and you can reminisce and share stories, and some of the same people, and interactions like that. they're really hard to describe, but you leave it just feeling like, oh my gosh, that was so crazy. Like what a small world, what a cool interaction. And then it's a mix of nostalgia and just joy, and just reminiscing, and I don't know, that's really, it's, you never know who you're going to run into or what you're going to talk about. And it, it never hurts to meet someone new. So
yeah, I love that. Well, we're going to need to send you guys some FitWit basketball jerseys because we have them made. So
there you go.
Represent. So just to kind of wrap up, tell us, what are some resources that you follow or that keep you up to speed, whether it's in your industry or for your clients or just for you personally as a professional?
So, well, as far as resources go, I mean, obviously Whitley Penn puts out some really good podcasts. We got Wealth Podcasts, we've got the Develop Podcast, and all sorts of stuff to keep you up to date on. More than just accounting and technical accounting stuff, but a lot of fun personal stuff and career development and that kind of stuff as well. Other than that, I try to be involved in the Permian Basin accounting, or Petroleum Accounting Society of the Permian Basin. I'm very involved in the energy stuff out here. Being my age, YPE, Young Petroleum or Energy is a good group to be involved with. I get a lot of emails from them about what's going on. Kind of just following my network on LinkedIn is big as far as day to day, what's coming out, what new accounting stuff is coming out, also what's happening in the industry and on the operations side. So I have a lot of we tend to get stuck with the numbers and stuck with the accounting terminology and maybe new guidance and stuff that's coming out. But we get less involved in maybe the day-to-day operations, what's happening in the industry or worldwide, and so following a lot of your clients on social media, following some of the networking leaders in that industry, you can keep up with the day-to-day operations, and that helps you when you get back into your client space, and you can talk about, hey, I just saw oil's up to $120 a barrel. What does that mean for you guys? Like, let's look forward and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of get my news from all over the place, but just being actually fairly active on LinkedIn is probably where I get the majority of my info.
I love that. Go LinkedIn. They have a lot of great resources, and the more you start engaging and liking, that's kind of how it curates your feed. So it probably gives you a really good feed to what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. Whatever algorithm they use that tailors your stuff they do a good job. They get you what you need.
So besides basketball, what does Evan do in his free time outside of the office? You're in a new community now. What are you guys up to in your spare time? What keeps you motivated?
Yeah, in my free time, I'm hanging out with Chelsea, my fiance, and our two little Shih Tzus at home for sure.
So fun.
Like to spend some time with them. And then, like every other, 30-year-old man right now, I'm getting into golf. So I've been golfing quite a bit. And that takes up a lot of time. So yeah, just between getting some good quality time at home with the fiance and the pups, and then maybe getting out on the course once a week, that's my happy place.
I mean, that's a great way to spend your time off. So golf takes up a lot of time.
It
know.
Does.
I've got a husband that loves to golf, but it's a great sport. You're gonna use it forever. Business, right?
We'll turn it into a networking opportunity.
Yeah, it's always a business outing. So I always like to end the podcast with the final question, just something fun. Any books, podcasts, show recommendations you have? They could be something related to, accounting, or could be something fun. What can you leave with our audience?
I don't have a whole lot of time where I get into books
and you're planning a wedding, or
maybe
not planning a wedding, but gonna have a wedding soon. So
semi-involved in planning a wedding. So we actually, over Easter break, we drove down to El Campo, where my fiance is from, and we listened to podcasts on the way back.
Okay.
And this podcast blew my mind. And if it's not accounting related or anything like that, but it's called The Thing About Pam. I don't know if anyone else has heard it or watched it. They turned it into I think a Netflix or an HBO series.
Okay.
But don't watch it because it doesn't tell the story well enough. But the podcast, The Thing About Pam, is fantastic. And at the end of every episode, it will leave you saying, like, what in the heck is going on? Like, this is insane. I cannot believe this is real life. And I think it's only 6 or 7 episodes, so it's fairly short. But it's wild. It's a wild ride, and it's very entertaining. It's a kind of a murder mystery type podcast. So if that's up your alley, The Thing About Pam, it's a really good listen.
Okay, The Thing About Pam. Well, we will have to all listen to that. I'm not so much in the murder mystery podcast game, but maybe
you'll still
6
enjoy
episodes. Maybe I can give it a try on a road trip. But thanks so much for joining us today, Evan. We really loved diving into your story. A lot of good tips that you had to share with our entire audience. So thank you for joining us, and we hope you all enjoyed this episode. Thanks.